Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. This is our 12th annual Issues and Eggs Breakfast Forum fundraising event. We're so glad you're here in support of the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson today. We could not continue defending democracy and empowering voters without our community rallying alongside our efforts to engage and educate voters. The League's mission of providing neutral, reliable information to voters, encouraging informed, active participation in government, and thoughtful civil dialogue among community members has never been more important. We have served Tucson for the past 84 years and counting. Issues and Eggs is our only fundraiser, and it enables us to maintain these valuable programs and services for all to attend. So please consider giving today. Before we begin, I'd like to share our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to Thanawautham and Pasquayaqui people. Okay, so today we'd like to recognize some of our community leaders that are among us. If you could please stand up when your name is called and remain standing. So we'll start with Cammie Evans and Kim Briggs from Pima County Supervisor Rex Scott's office. Our County Recorder, Gabriela Casares, Kelly. Gazelle Taylor, the City of Tucson, from Vice Mayor Santa Cruz's office in Ward 1. Adelita Grijalva, Pima County Supervisor, District 5. Nicholas McCullough, District 5 Aide. Donna Liggins, past president of the NAACP. Doris Snowden, past president of the NAACP. Frida Marshall, executive director, the Dunbar Pavilion. Beverly Elliott, executive director of the African American Museum of Southern Arizona. Larry Starks, Tucson Juneteenth Festival chair. Myra Ramos, Pima County Justice Services. Okay, so before you sit, I'd like everybody else in the audience to stand, please. So we want to say thank you so much for being here, for supporting the League, for supporting democracy and being a part of this special day. You're all important to us, and we're just so glad you're here, so thank you so much. Okay. Sorry to interrupt your breakfast. Okay, so a few general announcements before we begin. We couldn't do this without our sponsors today, so thank you so much. Please take a look at your program, recognize these businesses if you're able to support them, and your support from the sponsors will make sure that we'll continue serving our community. So thank you to our sponsors. Please help yourself to food and coffee at any time. Feel free to move about. So as we start the program, I just want to give a quick, statement is before we begin, I just want to provide perspective today for all guests. If you find this conversation triggering in any way, please feel free to step outside and take a break from the discussion. This is sometimes really hard subject matter to contemplate for a lot of reasons. So just want to make sure that you guys know that. So if you ever want to just take a step out, take a breath, please feel free to do that. So if that sounds okay, we'll get started. So this morning we have a thoughtful lineup of guests that will speak to this year's theme, Safe Lives, Safe Homes, examining the connection between domestic violence and housing. This issue is near and dear to my heart, having spent the last couple years in a role at Sister Jose Women's Center on South Park Avenue. I quickly learned how living on the streets for all folks is a violent and dangerous proposition. Our neighbors who find themselves unhoused for a wide range of reasons, and one of which is domestic violence. So let's talk about how this impressive panel was formed. The League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson Gun Violence Prevention Committee has been meeting over Zoom with members of law enforcement, the judicial system, and private agencies to explore domestic violence in our community. The committee learned about the complex system and how firearms play a prominent role in this process. The committee also learned about the difficulty of prosecuting cases of strangulation due to lack of evidence, which led them to begin efforts to secure donations for a thermal imaging gun, which would provide proof that someone had been strangled. And if you want to support this purchase today, on the back table where the books are, you're able to do so directly. So we're raising funds for that as well. It's a needed piece of equipment that'll make a big difference. While homelessness is visible to all of us every day, domestic violence is hidden away until it suddenly erupts into the news when someone is murdered by their partner. We hope this panel of experts will help you understand these issues on a deeper level, and perhaps you will take an active role in protecting our neighbors in these very difficult circumstances. So I'd like to begin to introduce our moderator today, Ms. Jolynn Begay-Lewis. Jolynn is the principal at Indian Oasis Intermediate Elementary School. She has been an educator for the past 18 years, from teaching to an assistant principal to a principal. Jolynn is Navajo and Thana Otham, with proud background of having a master's in multicultural bilingual special ed from the U of A, of course, where else? And another master's in educational leadership from NAU. She loves making a difference in her students' academic careers and in helping make school magical and fun. Who doesn't like that? She inspires her students and creates opportunities through productive partnerships to ensure her students can achieve their highest potential. Jolynn will introduce our esteemed panelists and champions today's conversation for us. So please welcome Jolynn.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, yes, everybody's up, so that breakfast must be really good. So I'm not that famous, but that bio did make me feel famous. And all of you are famous today because you are here, because you are the voice of many of those who may not be able to be here, are the voice of those who need a voice to be heard. So, and you're making a difference today to be here today by buying a raffle ticket. So make sure you buy a raffle ticket, and just by being here. So thank you to everybody who is here. And now I may not give you a test at the end, but just be ready just in case. So I know our theme is safe lives and safe homes. So we're going to come up with a little sign. So if you go like this to say safe lives, and safe homes. So we're going to remember that throughout the day, till 10:30, I believe. And then you'll have a test at the end. Let's see if you remember that, okay? Okay, so now to our panelists. I will introduce you to them. So listen to see how famous they are. So our first panelist is Anna Harper. She is the CEO at Emerge Center Against Domestic Abuse and is a faculty associate at Arizona State University School of Social Work. Prior to joining the Emerge team, Anna worked as a special staff assistant in Pima County Board of Supervisors, Chairman Richard Elias, and as the Crisis Services Director at the Southern Arizona Center Against Sexual Assault. Anna is a graduate of the University of Arizona. It's okay to clap. and Arizona State University, and received her licensure from the Arizona Board of Behavioral Health Examiners in 2004. Anna has provided numerous local and national trainings about domestic abuse, sexual violence, and court systemic-based best practices. So welcome, Anna. Our next panelist is Diana Sheldon. She is currently the interim CEO of Sister Jose Women's Center. Her career spans 30 years and includes working for 3 national organizations: American Cancer Society, Association of Multi-Ethnic Americans, and the Ronald McDonald House Charities. In 2016, Diana launched her nonprofit consulting firm with a focus on interim executive director work. Diana has facilitated successful leadership transitions for national and local organizations across the Southwest, while also serving on the following boards: St. Luke's Home, Children's Clinic, YMCA, Eastside Neighborhoods Volunteer Program. Welcome, Diana. Our third panelist, Chief Chad E. Kazmar, was appointed Chief of the Tucson Police Department in 2021. He has presented at various law enforcement conferences, including the Major Cities Chiefs Association and the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. His awards include the Police Executive Research Forum Gary P. Hayes Award and a Certificate of Special Congressional Recognition. Chief Kazmar is a member of the Major Cities Chiefs Association and the Police Executive Research Forum, and a board member with the Arizona Associations of Chiefs of Police, the Law Enforcement Immigration Task Force, and the Arizona High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. So he does a lot. Welcome, Chief Chad Kazmar. Our next panelist, Laura Conover, was first elected as the Pima County Attorney in 2020 and re-elected to a second term last year. As the third woman, to hold the office, second defense attorney and first victims' rights attorney, she has assembled a diverse senior leadership team to continue revolutionizing. Oh, I cannot say that word.
No, it's the word. It's not you, it's the word.
Is the word?
It's the word.
So, everybody help me. We're going to practice our phonics skills. How are we going to say that word?
Revolutionizing.
Yes.
Operation.
Operation.
I love it.
Reform, transparency, and accountability are Laura's core objectives. She continues to educate the legislature on cash bail, has put an end to capital punishment in the county, responsibly diverts cases of substance use disorder and mental illness to treatment, and keeps children out of the adult system. She is fortifying units in conviction and sentencing, integrity and fraud, and consumer protection to safeguard against unethical and exploitative behaviors. Her team built the only adult restorative justice program in the state and invented a victim text notification system to better serve victims' rights. Her first in the nation and agreements to especially
Deputize?
Yeah, deputize. Tribal, O'odham, and Yaqui prosecutors have improved access to justice. Laura was raised in Tucson. So are you a U of A alumni?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. And earned her undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Arizona and is proud to serve the community she calls home. So welcome to all our panelists. We are very happy that you are here to share your experience and to motivate us to make a difference and a change, because remember, we are creating safe lives and
Safe homes.
good job. Okay, so we will start with Anna Harper, and you will have 7 minutes. And I hope I don't have to bring my teacher voice out to stop you at 7 minutes.
You might have to.
And
It's okay.
we have paddles to show you, give you your time limits of how much time you have right here.
Okay, I see you.
Okay, are
Yeah.
we ready?
I am ready. Can you all hear me? Yes? I was ambitious with my 7 minutes, so they're going to gong me out of here. But I am thrilled to be here. I'm grateful and humbled. I want to thank the committee that coordinated and put all the labor in to have this event. Sherry, you are awesome. I also want to thank the members of the League for their continued support and partnership in building safer communities. And this year is a special year for Emerge because it is our 50th year celebration, 50 years of service in this community. And interestingly enough, I had the opportunity this week to meet with a few of the people who began back then what was a women's resource center, a home for pregnant mothers, and a hotline. And a handful of them are here today. Would you please wave your hand? These are the people that began this work in this community. And it was a really special moment to sit with them and listen to the struggle that they had some 50 years ago to realize their vision that safer communities are possible. We listened to their stories of pain, triumph, danger, and I was really struck by the passion, partnership, and love that still exists amongst that group. And so some 50 years later, Emerge is the largest comprehensive provider in Southern Arizona of services to domestic abuse survivors and their children. And 28 years ago, I started work right out of college as an advocate at the Brewster Center. And I've seen many evolutions of the work in this community, many attempts at coordinated partnerships. I've had to unlearn ways of thinking about the work while relearning new ways of doing the work several times over. And what I can tell you today is that we utilize an equity-centered, anti-racist approach to this work. We believe that all survivors deserve safety. And I really, truly, as I thought about what I would spend my 7 minutes on, I gotta tell you that the urgency that was here 50 years ago is still here today. In fact, in the last month and a half, we've lost 2 young women to domestic abuse and gun violence. They were 24 and 26 years old. All of us know someone. And when you look at this statistic of 15,000 calls on average to law enforcement per year, I gotta tell you that there's some national research that tells us that only about 10% of the actual incidents of domestic abuse are reported. That puts that 15,000 in perspective. The urgency is still here. So with my 7 minutes, I want to tell you where we are at, what we are doing about it, and I want to invite you to become a part of our belief that our community can build safety. And really, when you contextualize that statistic that I gave you about 10% of incidents being reported, you realize it's only the tip of the iceberg. So what's underneath the water, what's underneath that tip is very real danger and a very real need to understand the complexity of risk and the prevalence of gun violence in our community. We also know that gun violence related to domestic abuse is not unrelated from the gun violence in our community overall. So that calls us to begin to think about root causes of the issue and addressing that while we simultaneously continue our intervention work. And one of the ways that we can do that as a community is to utilize resources like the Fatality Review Team. In 2023, we helped to restart Pima County's Fatality Review Team that had been dormant since 2019. And as a part of that process, we did a meta review of the 26 domestic violence fatalities that happened between 2019 and 2022. And what we found is that 21 of those incidents involved intimate partners, and 15 of those incidents included a firearm at some point during the relationship. The data from the Fatality Review Team helps us to direct our attention to where we have opportunities to fill gaps, generate innovative solutions, and work on our partnerships. That work has to inform how we deliver our services. And the research about fatalities and domestic violence tells us that it is critical. It is critical to ensure that survivors know that services are available. That can impact the trajectory in a relationship. And so the urgency to maintain services is now. We cannot go back to where we have been. Last fiscal year, Emerge served some 5,000 individual. She said stop. You said stop. 2 minutes. Okay, I was like, stop. See how I listened. I just quit talking mid-sentence. Okay.
There was a lot of applause time, too.
Yeah, I was like, what is happening? This is 7 minutes. Okay, 6,000 calls to our hotline. You can see the statistics. The urgency is now. We've also prioritized understanding how risk exists in relationships. Pima County has a risk assessment protocol that's a partnership between the county attorney, victim services, law enforcement, and Emerge that helps us to identify people that are most at risk of being seriously harmed or killed. And so this slide gives you a snapshot of last quarter's numbers. 500 referrals to Emerge, 760 referrals to victim services at the county attorney's office, and about 80% of those referrals are high or elevated risk. The other component to this is the work of the Center Against Sexual Assault, who has a table out there. I invite you to visit their table. Their work to help us document injuries and non-fatal strangulation cases, as well as provide care to survivors, is critical. So we've focused our efforts in the last year at increasing utilization of the sexual assault nurse examiners to ensure that survivors have access to that care. And you can see from the slide that we've been quite successful. In the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year, we've outdone the entire number of exams completed last year. We have also worked at expanding the continuum of comprehensive services. We operate a 24-hour multilingual hotline, a confidential emergency shelter, 2 offices in the community, a robust lay legal program, a housing stabilization program, and an intervention program for those who are harming their partners. And outside of that, we've begun to evolve our coordinated community response. That is critical. The systemic response is important. But we know that courts and law enforcement alone cannot address this issue. We cannot arrest our way out of this issue. We need the partnership of community organizations, individuals, and groups. And this year, now more than ever, when everyone's funding is under threat, when services to survivors and those who are most vulnerable are not being prioritized, we need the community support. So I end with the invitation to get involved. We are looking for 50 groups to do 50 fundraisers to reach $50,000. We're looking for 50 corporations to help us raise $100,000. We need volunteers and individuals to learn about resources. The thing that can save people's lives is for all of us to become engaged in the community response. With that, I think I'm at 7 minutes.
Thank you, Anna Harper from Emerge. And just think, you are making a difference, and we are at a start right now with you being here today. So don't forget to buy your raffle tickets. It ends at 9:30 in about 40 minutes, so don't forget. And our next presenter is Diana Sheldon from Sister Jose Women's Center.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me. This is a great group. I've known about the League of Women Voters for decades. I'm originally from Iowa, and we used to be a primary state, so that's where my roots come from. And with Anna's speech this morning, and people that I've met here, we have met a lot of the women that you serve every day. And I started volunteering for Sister Jose in 2018. And the first thing that came to mind was I could have been one of the women that I meet every day at the front desk. So for the last 15 years, Sister Jose has been the only women's shelter in southern Arizona. We have served last year over 30,000 women who have crossed our doorstep. And what that means is over 100 to 150 women step through our door every day. And we know the challenges that they have, and the one thing that we also offer, which is unique in Tucson and I think in southern Arizona, is that we offer these women, if they have a pet, they can bring their pet with them. And obviously the pet issue is to keep them safe while they're out in the streets of Tucson and also at night. And so a lot of times when I'm on the phone, there's dogs barking, and I have to tell, don't worry, I'm not working from home or at the center. So Sister Jose is also a low barrier shelter. And what that means is every woman is invited to come through our doors without asking for IDs, who are they, and names. I mean, because we know that those change every day. And if they want to share it, they can share it. But that's why we really are proud of being a low barrier shelter, because a lot of times that is a real barrier for women to come through our door. And also, I want to talk about who this woman is that comes through our door every day. Her, the age ranges from 18 and today 80. We have an 80-year-old woman at the center, and the average age is 57. So when I talk about, that could have been me, 10 or 15 years ago, that easily could have been me. About 30% of our women have experienced domestic violence. And as Anna mentioned, we don't know who the rest are because they don't want to share it. A lot of times we recognize it. Maybe they come in with a black eye, bruises on their body, and then we can kind of easily reach out and talk to them a little bit more in depth. But normally that's not shared with us. The women who come through, especially who have issues, meet with our case managers who help them with our many resources that we are lucky to have here in Tucson, and we hope a lot of them still continue with what's happening with our with what's going on in different parts of the country. The women, we have 2 different programs that serve these women. We have a daycare program and a night program. And the daycare program serves everyone. Night program, they're in a little bit more able to have more resources. And there's 54 beds that they can have each night to spend here at Sister Jose. We provide, obviously, food. We provide laundry services, and we provide showers. So you can imagine what that means if you've been on the streets for weeks, that you just want maybe some clean clothes, which we can provide, or just take that shower and take a rest and be safe. Most of the women, of course, as I said, who share their stories of domestic violence, but also it's drug issues, mental health, many mental health issues, and also economic issues. And when I talk about the 80-year-old woman, we all know what's happening in our communities about rent hikes. She couldn't afford her rent anymore, so here she is on our doorstep. And with Anna's telling all these statistics about being safe, that's what we do every day, is try to keep women safe. And I'm going to leave you, I'm going to have a short speech today. I'm going to give the chief here some of my time. But one takeaway that I have for you today, when you leave here today, you're going to notice that you don't see women on the streets. That's the first thing I learned when I came to Sister Jose in 2018. I'm going, that's not possible. You drive home or do your work today, you don't see women on the streets. And if you do, it's mainly with another man. These women are in hiding every day to be safe. So keep that in mind and keep Sister Jose in your mind. And like every nonprofit, we're always in need of money and support and people to cook every night for our night program. So please reach out to us. And we want to thank you for keeping all of our women safe. Thanks.
Thank you to Diana Sheldon from the Sister Jose Women's Center. Thank you for sharing that about the stories. You also have some stories on your table. There are 10 different stories on your table to share amongst your table. I know you learned how to share in school, so pass it by to the next person next to you. Once you're done with one story, you can share it with another person. So thank you for those who provided the stories and put them on the nice little cards. But do know, you guys are making a difference being here, because 12 years ago, I learned that this room was only 25 people. And now you have 300 people. So thank you to the League. And so our next panelist, Chief Chad Kazmar.
Thank you. I started my timer because I'm not getting in trouble here. I do. I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try to defer those to Laura. My name is Chad Kazmar. I am your chief of police, going on my 4th year. I've been serving this community for nearly 25 years. I've been with the city for nearly 29 years. I was a lifeguard and a swim instructor before that through college. Also, U of A graduate, bear down. So I'm here today to share to collaborate with my colleagues at this table. And you're going to hear, even though we have not all shared our presentations, you will absolutely, and I'm excited to hear that you have strong themes that are connected, interconnected, and interwoven. My comments, though, today aren't just from my perspective of serving this community and the things that I've seen in my past 25 years, but also lived experiences as a 3rd-generation Tucson and raising 4th, as a product of a divorced family where domestic violence and alcohol and substance misuse were drivers of split custody, of a survivor of domestic violence. Of my father was an amazing man when he wasn't drinking, and that's how he coped with his childhood and his Vietnam War experiences. I had domestic violence experiences, and I'm not ashamed to share that with you. I'm also proud to say that that I've broke generational behaviors in the way that I've raised 2 young boys, one who's now serving in the U.S. Army, and another who's a freshman in high school. We're talking about safe lives and safe homes, and while most of the domestic violence that I experienced as a young boy, and my older sister was smart enough to keep her mouth shut, and I was not so much, even back then, not realizing I was destined towards a life of service. But I stood up. I stood up for my sister. I stood up for my stepmom, and that often made me the target of my father's anger. And there was only one time where that verbal conflict turned physical, but we were in Rocky Point. And I remember as about a 14-year-old boy when that turned physical, that I didn't have a place to escape, and I didn't have a place to retreat, and I couldn't just retreat to my mom's house because we were in Mexico. And so that stuck with me. But I think I'm an outlier in the way that I lived with those experiences, in the way that I knew one day when I would get married, and here I am 29 years into a relationship and 25 years married, and couldn't be more proud of the partnership that we have, and my best friend that I married that I depend on every day to do my job as chief of police. But as you heard from, thank you. But as you heard from Anna, out of our 142,000 calls for service last year, about 7% of those were calls that we responded to domestic violence incidents. Most of those calls were probably not generated from the victim in those cases, as you've heard. They were finally somebody who decided to speak up. It was finally a neighbor who had heard too much and had been afraid, but decided it's gone too far. It's one of the most dangerous calls that we respond to, because even when the victim in those cases calls us to break that cycle, violence can often turn on the officers when we're required to make an arrest, and we choose to do that, which is over nearly 50% of the time that we have contact on domestic violence cases. So last year in 2024, we investigated nearly 10,000 of the 15,000 total cases of domestic violence in Pima County. And about 3/4 of those are misdemeanor cases that would go to city court, and about 25% of those are cases that we issued to my partner here at my table, Laura Conover, at the county attorney's office. And there's a lot of collaboration and communication that goes on between the county and the city court and the Pima County Attorney's Office to make sure that there is accountability and that we can work to break cycles. But there's so much more work to be done, because as you heard this morning, if you think and reflect on the last 72 hours of news cycles, you didn't hear about domestic violence. You didn't see it on the drive-in this morning. It certainly hasn't been one of the prominent conversations, and whether you're whichever side of the aisle you're on, Proposition 414, which thank God is over next week, so we can all get our lives back, no matter how it sorts out. But the reality is, everybody sitting at a table in this room has experienced it. You have a friend, a colleague, or a family member that is currently experiencing it, and you might not know how to intervene. Or you're afraid that if you do intervene, that your relationship will be cut off from the person that you care about. So the reality is, we have a lot of work to do in this community, because it does exist, and it does happen, and there's a lot of justification for those behaviors. So it's not just about law enforcement response through a mandatory arrest and suspect accountability, or evaluation through the appraise tool, as you heard. And I'm also proud to sit here and tell you that we all depend on each other in this room and at this table to make sure that we're doing our jobs and we're doing our part. And one of the first calls that I got as chief from Emerge, and Anna was one of my colleagues, and said, "Hey, you guys are really sucking on completing these appraise tools." And I said, "Tell me more." And we weren't completing that task, and it's such an important tool that's been in implementation since 2018. And we met and we discussed it, and we quickly got our arms wrapped around why that was occurring in an environment where 40% of my patrol staff has less than 5 years of experience, and I have 60 to 80 new officers that come on board every year. And so And in a complex environment where last year we responded to over 142,000 calls for service and generated another 115,000 calls of incidents of proactive police work, there's a lot on their plate. But we have a gun problem and a gun crime problem and a violence problem in Tucson. And we're seeing more and more that folks are resorting to violence. And we've touched on it today, that poverty is a driver. We still struggle with that in the larger Tucson regional area with poverty rates at nearly double that. And we all know when there's financial hardship at home, that creates challenges throughout many aspects of your relationships. But it also creates an environment where housing can be weaponized. And so what's someone to do when they have children and they're a victim of domestic violence, and there's food insecurities, and there's housing insecurities? And we certainly see that in this county of being leveraged. And so we do depend on Sister Jose's and Emerge and IMU 360 and a whole host of other resources so that we can help break those cycles of violence. And I know I'm running tight on time, so I'm gonna kind of wrap my part of the presentation up as we continue to expand what a safe community looks like and how all of your regional judicial, prosecutorial, and public safety partners can work and collaborate. And so in 2021, City Court Judge Wendy Million led an effort, a regional effort, for something called the Domestic Violence Firearms Technical Assistance Grant, which we refer to as FTAP. And those are federal grant dollars that we are relying on to expand beyond the initial investigation of that case, to evaluate beyond the appraise tool in making sure that weapons are removed from households of suspects of domestic violence. But we're also, thank you. And also enhancing our use of serving orders of protection. And so while we've been piloting this within the city of Tucson, that's now scaled to Pima County. We just had a presentation with our local chiefs, with the Pima County Attorney's Office and the Pima County Superior Court leadership, and so we're scaling this program. We're not where we need to be, but I'm proud to be part of a regional effort here in Pima County where we continue to make space to talk about a crime, a silent crime, that represents 7% of our total workload, and within my organization represents 2 investigative units. And there's not 2. I can tell you, in a scarce resource environment where I have about 1,200 team members to keep the 33rd largest city in this country safe, we've got 2 different units of resources that are assigned to this crime. But the reality is, I could probably use 4. And so I just want us to think today not just about the accountability, but the prevention. How do we start thinking in an under-resourced community where we're really, managing young men's emotions at schools and investing resources in how we break these cycles of violence. And so we're not sitting here talking about the crimes that have occurred and the fact that we did lose 3 lives last year out of our 64 homicides to preventable domestic violence.
Thank you, Chief Chad Kuzmar. It is important to help break those cycles, and so thank you for sharing your story. And small science lesson, the infrared camera are non-contact devices that detect thermal energy and then convert it into an electrical signal, which is then processed to produce an image for our police officers to help with our domestic violence victims that are out there. So if you are able to, please visit the table about the infrared camera, and the table is outside, because you don't know, maybe you are that one person or that connection that they need for today. So thank you. And our next panelist. Oh, and don't forget, you have index cards on your table. If you have questions that you would like to ask the panelists, if you could fill out the index card, and one of these beautiful ladies here will come and pick it up, and we will ask them the questions after they are done. And so our next panelist, Laura Conover.
Thank you so much. And I want to echo the thank you to everyone here who put in such incredible work to make a really necessary and courageous conversation happen. This is my spring allergy voice and face. And if my face doesn't explode during this, it'll be a success. So bear with me. Thank you so much. Democracy is healthy. You know, the league knows that as much as anyone. Democracy is healthy. And was last year brutal? Yes. Oh, it was. But democracy is healthy. And when you need to ask the community for a second term, you better believe you are listening and hearing and tracking the patterns of where the concerns are most great. And domestic violence was one of those. It was reported that in 2022 and 2023, the Pima County Attorney's Office had dismissed 900 domestic violence cases. And that quote got repeated over and over and over again. I asked the original authors if they would share the information with me because I was concerned. They declined, and that's fine, that's their right. But it was concerning because that number sounds concerning. But you have to dig into the overall context. And you better believe that in spite of my predictions that the gentleman who's been charging our domestic violence cases for now 33 years, I knew he had not changed his practices. I knew I had not told him to revolutionize his practices in a way that would cause harm. But when I hired our new domestic violence chief, a 30-year veteran himself who came back to the Pima County Attorney's Office where his career started, I said, I have a really difficult, horrible, tedious, and absolutely critical project for you. I need to know what that 900 number means. The national charging rate for DA's offices across the nation floats at 50%. Let me repeat that. 50% of what law enforcement brings into a DA's office is then prosecuted. That's the natural check and balance of the system. Police officers need to operate at probable cause of very low standards so that when they see harm, they disrupt immediately. A prosecutor's office operates at a much higher standard of a substantial likelihood of conviction because liberty is at stake. The Constitution is at stake. And so we analyze, we get the luxury of analyzing in our private offices quietly later all of the evidence to make sure we have a felony conviction. And that's why the charging rate is what it is. But you can see that domestic violence gets extra attention. It floats above that 50% and has historically. So I needed to look back at pre-COVID, pre-my administration, going back to 2018, and we needed to look at all of those cases. In 2018 and 2019, the Pima County Attorney's Office had approximately 88 around there prosecutors. I walked in with 61. That was COVID. That's what happened in 2020. And nevertheless, you can see we did more with less. The 900 is actually low. When you actually do the math, and this chart's on your table, and please pass it around. I like that. Please share. Pass it around so that you can see the tiny numbers. It's actually a little bit low, and I did the math 3 times because I can't math. I know, that's why I went to law school. It's actually 1,057 that were either refused or, and let's remember, Gray is absolutely still prosecuted as a misdemeanor. We're still holding people accountable. We're still making a record of domestic violence conviction. It's incredibly important. I took this information privately to my #1 service provider, my #1 most important partner in this, and that was Emerge. And I met with them privately to show that we have a very serious problem. Sure, misinformation is really, really bad, right? The league cares about that most importantly. It's bad for democracy. Misinformation is bad. Plucking numbers out of context, it's bad, sure. But that's not the concern. The concern is that post-COVID, largely over time, most violent crimes are plummeting back down into where they should be, right? The homicide spike, armed robbery, ag assault countywide coming down. Look what's not coming down. That's the real problem. Look at 24. Someone a couple of days ago when I shared the chart said, well, an engineer's eye tells you that 25 is already looking really bad. That's not good where that's floating right there. If ever there was a time for us all to be leaning into each other, we sure know that time has arrived right now. Because when I had that private meeting with Emerge, they were so honest and direct with me and said, the problem is you are drowning in cases and holding people accountable, and then that is depriving you from the leadership that we need in the fatality review, the leadership that we need to be making sure that we are moving forward and not backwards. And that was really honest, important feedback that we need moving forward. And so we are committed to making sure that Emerge thrives, that our collaboration thrives, that we are resetting on all of this and working together for all of us. I need to tell you that a few days ago when I presented this chart, one of the questions from the audience was, well, you're focused on domestic violence. What about the real crime? And I answered it gently and diplomatically and tried to reframe it. I know, well, the first time. I know. But then when they repeated it and said, where's all the other, but you know, people don't really see that as real crime. And then I had to start teaching. I had to start teaching. That's the problem. This is the problem. And I am so grateful to all of you for caring so much and helping us work collaboratively and together so that we can move this forward.
Thank you, Laura Conover. So while we're waiting for the question, so remember we might have a test at the end. And so how do we say safe lives and safe homes? Safe lives, safe homes. So we have a question for Anna Harper. What do you see as the missing links in services available to the women and families you serve? What could the community do to better serve them?
Thank you for this question. You know, a number of years ago, the Institute on Research for Women at the U of A did a needs assessment that revealed that the priorities or the largest gaps in our community for domestic abuse survivors include housing, access to legal services, risk assessment, and the need to prioritize partnerships, healthy, trusting partnerships. And I really believe that that's true today. The volume of folks coming through the door who need support is beyond the capacity that we have on any given day. That's true for most organizations, agencies. And in a time where our funding is uncertain, that is really terrifying to me, that we have expanded, we have wait lists, we are full all of the time, and we might not be able to sustain the services we have today. So for me, the real critical issue and the way that the community can get involved is to really pay attention. This issue is a community issue. This is not a private issue. This is not an issue of individual people, and this is not a problem of courts and police and prosecutors. This is a community issue. We need your support. You can get involved. You can learn about resources. You can donate your time, your money. You can encourage other folks to do that. That's what we need in order to address this issue. And Emerge remains committed to addressing those areas of that needs assessment, we will not stop, even if they take all our money away.
Thank you. Our next question, I believe, would be for Chief Chad Kazmar. How often does a prohibited possessor of a gun face arrest for a domestic violence charge? And can their guns ever be completely taken away?
Great question. It's a hard one. I should give it to Laura. We arrest 50 to 60 prohibited possessors a month. I don't have the full breakdown on how many of those folks are prohibited possessors. I will tell you, it's extremely difficult to keep guns out of hands of people who want them, both through the legal process to obtain them, or what we call straw purchase, or for buying those firearms from private party sale. What I'll tell you is, last year we had 64 homicides. We had 175 non-fatal skin-piercing shootings. We had an additional 400 shootings on top of that. So our prohibited possessors, including domestic violence, is something that Laura and I are in conversations about. Our subordinate teams through our public safety partnership, which is a Department of Justice project of how do we continue to reduce violent gun crime in Tucson, because we saw an uptick actually last year by about 6%. So like Ms. Conover said, we're seeing some statistics lower in some areas, but gun crime is unfortunately not one of those. And so I want to, because I'll actually give Laura credit for giving me this idea too, because facts do matter here. And what you're seeing on the news is that out of all of those shootings, that's over 600 shootings last year, not one of those victims or suspect was somebody that was living in the United States without legal status to do so.
Thank you.
And the problem, and how we'll tie that back into domestic violence, and I just told this to an ICE leadership this week on a conference call that wasn't so pleasant, was that they haven't been standing side by side with police and rebuilding relationships in a post-George Floyd world. But now what's coming out of Washington and impacting communities like our own, who are border communities, and where half of our population is Hispanic, is that fear is being created. Although I've said a million times that we're not going to be an immigration arm of the federal government, there's still fear. And it provides an environment for further victimization, and we'll tie it back into safe lives, safe spaces, safe housing, and that what I'm worried about is that victims, community members who, outside of not having legal status to be here in a historically failed immigration process over the last several administrations, there's no way for them to obtain legal status, and they are welcomed community members here, and that provides an environment for them to be further victimized. And so we have to think about what that looks like in Tucson.
I know that this issue is really, really especially important to this group, because going back to those 900 cases, it was often referred to as domestic violence firearms cases. And again, I was extremely alarmed, and also you all know I'm such a data geek. So this amazing Nathan Leonardo, our amazing returning chief for domestic violence, looked at all 197 domestic violence firearm cases from 22 and 23. 197. We kept all but 21. We prosecuted all of them to the fullest extent of the law except 21, and then he broke down all the 21 for me and explained why they couldn't be processed, and eventually says, I agree with the original consideration back in 22 and 23. So again, twofold problem, right? Do we have the tools to hold people accountable for domestic violence firearms cases? Absolutely. We are prosecuting them to the fullest extent of the law at a very, very, very high rate. But the overall numbers are the problem, right? I so agree with Chief when he says that Tucson is awash in firearms. And that is the fundamental problem that we'll never give up on at the legislature.
Thank you. The next question is for you, so you can keep the mic.
Sure. Sorry.
What is the one issue you would like to see pursued at the state legislature?
There it is. Well, so I continue. I will never stop talking about and educating and trying to run and help run with a number of our key legislators like Nancy Gutierrez. I will never stop on red flag. And if you don't know red flag, it is a very thorough, legal, and protected process with lots of due process built into it and protections built into it, where you can petition when you think someone is unsafe in possession of a firearm, right? They are a threat to others or to themselves. I'll never stop pushing that. At the local level, we've done some ordinances, even recently, with the Board of Supervisors on at least safe storage or requiring people to just report that their firearm has been stolen. Things that we think we could get bipartisan support on. The Goldwater Institute, filed a lawsuit the night the ordinance passed. We had national partners come in. We worked with Brady to fight that lawsuit tooth and nail to see if we could protect that ordinance of just requiring people to report that their firearm has been stolen, because that's a prohibited possessor tactic. And Goldwater won initially. Not sure it's the last word. I can't say more right now. My client, the Board of Supervisors, will be making a decision on whether to pursue that. But it's amazing to be working with Brady nationally on that.
Thank you. And to go with what you said about the last word, we are not the last word. So we are making a difference today. And I don't know if you can hear the rain outside. You are making a stand today.
Rain is a blessing, that's right.
So to Chief Kazmar, what % of victims are men? What resources and programs are available to help young men break the cycle of domestic violence?
The majority of the victims are not men in these cases, but we did have a case in one of the justified homicides last year was a male actually defending himself with a firearm. There are resources. I've been on the Boys and Girls Club leadership team for almost a decade at this point. There's programs like IMU 360, Lance Meeks at Goodwill Rec. We're doing innovative things through Community Violence Interruption called CVI. That's in collaboration with County Attorney's Office, with Trauma Center, University Medical Center. We're looking to disrupt those cycles, but there's just not enough resources. There's not enough investments, and there wasn't to begin with. And we manage about $30 million of grants, local, state, and federal grants, just within the police department. And a lot of those grants right now are subject to not being there next year. And so I do worry, just like Emerge, that in an environment where only 4% of my budget is not assigned to personnel costs, which is not unique to the police department. That's the case for a lot of the city resources, and you've been reading in the news about the financial hardships within the county as well. We're all lean, and we depend on these federal dollars. So you all have a voice. We need to continue to scale those programs. I like to say we have one of the most generous nonprofit communities in the country, but I think there's always opportunity to figure out how to better connect those services. And that happens through environments like this, but I think also we need to think about how technology is made available to the officers who are out there. The reality is, and when I say officers, I mean deputies, I mean first responders. So when that call comes in the 911, it might not be appropriate to send somebody from public safety, but if it is, and officers do respond there, how do the officers at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning know what resources are available? So arrest just isn't the solution, but they have places to take folks who have, again, housing insecurities, food insecurities. We have a lot of people. We think about the unsheltered population as just somebody who's dealing with a substance misuse disorder out on the street, but the reality is there's a lot of folks who are experiencing homelessness or houselessness in Tucson because they just can't afford to live.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to add, I mentioned that we have a small men's education program that's specific to intervening when violence is occurring, but that work has expanded, and the chief mentioned Goodwill of Southern Arizona, and I got to highlight that they have a program called the Legacy Program, which is for young Black men. We have Healing Justice, which is for young men who have had experiences of violence. We also have a partnership with Larry Starks at Juneteenth. We're facilitating a Black men's healing space and a call to action space for men and young men. We also have a small program at TUSD's District Alternatives to Education program, where we are intervening early on with youth who are already having experiences and are one step away from being completely rejected by our community. So again, please get involved and support all of those programs.
Thank you. And thank you. And thank you to all of you for bringing, I know some of you have brought people with you or guests with you. So thank you for bringing them with you, because that creates more voices and gets the word out to help us make action happen. And so our next question is, how does the Tucson Police Department interact with our homeless population?
Great question. So the city, I'm really proud to say, has invested a lot of non-traditional resources in scaling. We call it putting the right work in the right hands through our homeless protocol and outreach and prioritizing, much like the appraise tool, who's most at risk, who's most at need, because there's such great need out in the community. We have a community outreach unit that deals with mental health and substance misuse disorders, who has a familial connection to somebody sitting at this table and has been doing amazing work. That's largely behind the scenes, and also have embedded folks with lived experiences that have been unsheltered and have been living with substance misuse disorders themselves, so and are in a recovering status. So we have quite a few resources. There's 4 different patrol divisions that are out there every day. You're sitting in Operations Division Midtown as we speak, and they also have assigned resources who are out there engaging folks for services. There's been a lot of conversation in the community and within the city of Tucson. We are committed to evidence-based strategies in our commitment, and what we used to call place network investigations, which is now referred to as VIVA, Violence Interruption Vitalization Action. In our newest VIVA location, which is where we collaborate, it's a data-based approach to where do we have the most gun violence in Tucson, and where can we go in and work with community and property managers and owners in a holistic approach where we bring all city resources, not just public safety, in our county and city partners to go, okay, what's going on in here and how do we disrupt this cycle? That corridor is primarily focused right now on unsheltered populated related issues that have turned violent. We have seen an uptick in that. Over a third of the homicides last year were actually folks that were experiencing houselessness and were living out on the streets. So we're seeing violent upticks. Most folks who are struggling with fentanyl use, which if we haven't made that clear, 50% of fentanyl in this country is seized in the state of Arizona, and most of that is seized in our southern Arizona regional area. That's driving a lot of the challenges that we're facing, and most of the folks who are struggling with fentanyl are also polydrug users and using methamphetamine, which does create quite a bit of violence and gun violence. So it's complex, it's layered. There's no one approach. The city is, and it is in collaboration with the county on that project as well. So it's a multifaceted, but it's as complex as peeling an onion when we're trying to assess what's working. And I'll say, both Laura and the sheriff have been great partners in sharing data. I need to know from the time I have contact with somebody, what's the adjudication of that case? What's the outcome? And 2 years ago, I couldn't tell you what that is. And it's not where it needs to be yet, but we share data through something called Data Lake, and Pima County Health is jumping on board. So county leadership, city leadership, collaborative effort. The issues we're talking about today have to be a metropolitan approach, which is all of the Tucson community, not just a city, not just a county, to thrive and work.
Thank you. And so the next question. Chief Kazmar, you pretty much answered the next question. So we're going to give the other ladies a chance to answer the next question. And it may pertain to many of you in the room today. So we were going to try and limit to less than a minute because we're running out of time. So how many of you have federal grants that may disappear and limit your work?
Just all of us. Just all of us. All of us.
So you're welcome to answer as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please, you do it. No, go Emerge. Yeah.
Emerge has a $9 million budget. 7 million, these are approximate numbers, of that originates from the federal government. Either direct grants to the organization or money that is passed to the state, city, and county. We are in trouble. I will tell you that all new grant applications have been pulled down. We cannot apply for new money. So come October 1, any renewal grants we would have had, new grants we could have applied for are non-existent. The issue is huge.
Sister Jose has more or less their state grants, which we're pending right now. And our budget isn't as big as Emerge, but we're at $2 million and experiencing and a possibility of some more expansion due to the homelessness. So we're worried. And again, like all of us sitting here, we're reaching out to the community as we move forth. So we're hoping for all your support because we all do such good work here in Tucson and we all care.
Again, $25 to $30 million of grants. A majority of those are federal grants. I have about 80 team members who are funded within those grants. A lot of my analysts that I require to do PhD level holding folks that tell me more about the data and tell me and guide my direction to my staff on how to use that data. So it would be catastrophic for us. That includes another 40 of those positions are also commissioned police officer positions that are partially funded over 3 years. And police officers are really expensive, about $143,000 a person, with total cost. So as I'm trying to give the city relief, because I am one of their more expensive departments to run, but it's catastrophic. It's catastrophic for all of us.
Our victim services division for decades has always relied on federal money, and so it's a huge concern for all of us in the room.
Thank you. So the next question, you can choose who would like to choose this one. What are you doing to provide culturally sensitive services to domestic violence survivors that are undocumented or LGBTQ people?
I'll start, unless you want to go.
No, go ahead.
Okay. As I said in my initial comments, we believe in a model that is equity-centered and anti-racist. I say that because it's important that we take into consideration the lived experiences that people have. Saying that DEI isn't a thing doesn't make it not a thing. The experiences, the historical connections, it doesn't change the fact that there's a reality to what happens when someone experiences violence and how they survive that, the options available to them, whether it's safe to ask for help, the consequences of asking for help. Those things are real. There's something called cultural hegemony, which is the idea that if you say something enough and repeat it enough, it becomes taken as truth. And saying that racism isn't real, saying that transphobia isn't real, saying that homophobia isn't real doesn't make it not real. $7 million of our $9 million budget is in jeopardy because we believe that serving people in the ways that make sense for them is healing. It humanizes them. We have to keep doing the work from that place, or we're actually going to reinforce the very dynamics that we are here to address. And I don't know about y'all, but when this story is told in history, we will be on the right side of that story.
Yeah, thank you. Since Sister Jose is a low barrier shelter, we accept everyone. We don't, ask where they come from and who they are and what their background is. And for those who need special accommodations, we provide them. So our door is always open to everyone.
Great question. For me, from a policing perspective, it needs to be, I can have all the enhanced training that I want, but that's different than lived experiences. There's no substitute for lived experiences. There's no substitute for somebody responding to a call for service, all the way up to the top of the organization that have lived experiences to interact in the community with a certain way, because we're Tucson. And that's why we've committed to the 30 by 30 initiative, which is by 2030 that 30% of the recruits at the academy will be women. That's why you can look no further to my leadership team than to see there's people with very different lived experiences that look very different than me, and we have all very different thought processes, trust me, on any given day about how to handle different situations, and that's what makes a capable and competent department. We do follow SB 1070 related to immigration, but it's having policy also, guiding policy and training and practices that guide our actions so that officers know what we expect from them. And for example, within immigration, we don't ask immigration if you're a victim of a crime. We don't care about your immigration status, and that's written in policy, and that's been in practice for over 15 years, nearly 15 years. But it also, I'm sorry, Laura, it's also learning from our mistakes when we do have those, and one of a positive outcomes of our own trials and tribulations as we've developed and evolved as a police department is having community to come out and teach what their lived experiences are to our recruits, and then when they're in that advanced early training, so that officers know who they're working for and are more connected to the community that they're serving.
I know that, yeah, absolutely. He spoke too soon. I know that the chief and the sheriff agree that fear makes us less safe, that if you are afraid to report crime or afraid to call for help, it's gonna be obvious. We're gonna watch the crime rate crawl back up, and all of our such hard, targeted, evidence-based work that we've been doing together to bring the crime rate down, it's very frustrating to see that. I've been trying to do a couple of things, and by request, I talk a lot about 88 Crime. 88 Crime is housed in the Pima County Attorney's Office. It's yet another division in the People's Office, and it's provided anonymous, successful crime reporting for decades, and that's always been very important. But it's incredibly important now, and the people who respond are bilingual, of course. And then on the second piece is just constant messaging. I try constant messaging that all are welcome here, all are safe here. And in particular, just last week we had an incredibly successful trial outcome where LGBTQIA kids at a high school had been targeted and absolutely terrorized. And lifting up that there is no place here for that, and that you will be held accountable, and that we will lift that up for the hate crime that it was.
Thank you. To go along with your comment, so Chief Kazar, how can we reduce the fear of people in contact with the law enforcement upon arrival to incidents, but when so many police arrive at one time?
Wow, I wish so many police arrived at one time. Yeah. So it just depends on the type of call that we're responding to. whether it's an active killer threat at a school, there's gonna be a lot of us, and we're gonna have long guns, and we're gonna go in there, and our mission there is to save lives and to make sure that teachers and students aren't being harmed, physically harmed. That's one of the highest level shows of force that you'll see, and that can be really unsettling to parents and kids. And I'm sorry that we live in a world where those types of things have to happen. And I've been on some of those calls for service even as chiefs, and thank God most of them have been hoax responses. But as you saw in the media less than a month ago, we had somebody that was armed with a firearm and a knife, and his intent was to harm kids who were very young, and we disrupted that. So the best thing that we do is we're focused and intentional on, for example, when we need to show up with a long gun. And just so everybody's clear on what that means, is a rifle. We don't take handguns to rifle fights because it doesn't work out well for us, right? And when I became chief, we had about 120 rifles to deploy over 4 different patrol divisions over 250 square miles. And you see it on the news. The level of gun violence in this town is shocking. It is not unusual for 50 to 100 rounds to be fired at a scene. You saw last night, who in here remembers the media last year on the hookah lounge shooting on Speedway and Country Club, right? Well, guess what? There were a lot of other shootings that you didn't hear because they weren't in affluent neighborhoods, right? Yeah. And that shooting happened with an officer's lights and sirens on, lights on a traffic stop to where the offenders knew the officer was there. So we live in this really difficult world where I have to balance where folks aren't afraid of the officers, but there are some things like street racing is another example where we have to show up in force, because if 1 or 2 officers show up to an intersection takeover, what we know is that crowd, that mob mentality, and this is thanks to social media, because everybody wants that next click, that the officers will be turned on and harmed.
Thank you for the insight of what you see. That's very important for us to hear. So I got a question. So my question is, what is the most present issue of safe lives, homes encountered by your students and your families? So on the Thanatam Reservation, it's very far, so we have very limited resources of what we can offer to our families and our students. But we have people, organizations that come out to our schools, just like you guys are doing today by you creating partnerships. So we have people who come out like IM 360 and Margot from the Tucson Police Department. She brought her whole crew. We had a bunch of police on our campus for a positive thing. And we also have a Sunrise House on our campus where families can come and they can get resources that they need, from shoes, clothes. They have food boxes that they can come and get. It's almost like a store, so they can come in, it's safe. They just come in and get whatever they need. There's no limit. And so we try and offer that for our families and our students, but we also have our counselor, Shay Flanagan, and our behavior specialist, Guy Antone, who gives our students services for if they need counseling, of what we can give them. And so those are the services that we have on our campus. So thank you. And I believe the raffle, or Emily, are you ready? So thank you to all the panelists. Maybe we should test the panelists. How do we say safe lives, safe homes?
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Ready? Safe lives, safe homes. How do you think they did? So A+ to everybody for for remembering the safe lives, safe homes, because you are all making a difference, and you're getting an A+ for being here and making change.
Okay, thank you so much again to the panelists. And then we have a special gift for Jolynn. So she got an A+ today. Don't you agree?
To the table. We don't want to sit up here.
Oh, no, I'm fine.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was our first attempt at me emceeing, so I forgot to introduce myself. My name's Emily Birdson. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters Greater Tucson. And then thanks to Jolynn again. This was her first event, which she shared with me, talking not to kids, but to adults. So here we go. But you did a great job. Thank you so much for your leadership, your help today, and leading our very important discussion. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so a couple more things. We have our Shiro honorees that we want to talk about today. So as I was sleepless in my bed last night anticipating the power of today, I thought about what Shiros meant and why we're here today to honor these 4 individuals. And it really goes to having a vision, to having passion, and to really want to better our community. And this is exactly what these 4 individuals have done today, and that's why we want to give them a little love, and then we'll invite them up one by one. I'll read a little bit about them, and they'll give us some comments. So let's start with Desiree Cook. Please come on up, Desiree. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Desiree this morning, and she's just as fabulous as she looks today. And not only that, but one of our advocacy chair for the league, Lovely Gantier. Are you here today? I saw you earlier. I don't know where you are. Oh, there she is, Lovely. She's a member of the board, and if I've been watching IMU 360 on social media, and if you haven't seen what they do, you should follow them on social media and take a look, because it's truly outstanding, and it'll warm your heart today. So a little bit about Desiree. Please come on up. She's the founder and CEO of the nonprofit called IMU 360. Desiree Cook's lived experiences led her to see the foster care crisis through a clearer lens and advocate so our underserved population back into fabric of society by revolutionizing a movement called I Am Somebody to boost self-esteem, customized hygiene, self-improvement classes, life skills, and home ownership to break generational cycles to create generational change, just like we talked about today. Desiree has brought, yes. Desiree has brought the Tucson community together to build 10 tiny homes for unsheltered youth. They are either 350 or 450 square feet, and I think it was just a couple weeks ago that you had a dedication. Yes. The young adults pay a small amount of rent, part of which is put away into an escrow account as funds for purchasing a home on their own in the future. While they live to learn independently, they are not alone. The IMU 360 headquarters is right next door to the home. The headquarters has a lounge for the young adults to spend time together and to learn how to trust others and themselves again. So we're here. One of our Shiros today is Desiree Cook, so if you would.
I am so honored to be in your presence, and what an amazing event. I learned so much, and thank you so much for honoring me as a Shiro, as a queen, as I like to always call other people. It means so much to me personally as well as professionally. And so, you know, the stats that we were hearing, I am one of the ones that went from serving time in the state of Arizona to now serving my community. Thank you. I am one of those drug addicted to crack cocaine and heroin, and now giving back to my community and empowering whole healed people so that we can actually sew them back into the fabric of the community. I am a survivor of domestic violence. So with that being said, we can, as a community and by empowering each other, speak life to each other for the essence of a healthier community. And so our underserved youth need us more than anything. We are in crisis. We have over 10,000 underserved youth within our backyard alone. And with that, we're talking about foster care, the unhoused. And so we must honor them and really see them as unearthing the concrete path that has been laid before them and replacing it with some seeds of hope so that we can reduce the crime rate, but also reduce victimization as such as sex trafficking and human trafficking and domestic violence. There's so much work to be done to empower and create the whole healed person. We all deserve to be whole and deserve to be healed. Underserved youth deserve it as well. And so it's about breaking generational cycles to create generational change. We all win when we do that. So I ask that you join the I Am Somebody movement, and not only joining the I Am Somebody movement, speak life to yourself, because we need it, especially in the climate that we are in today, so that, thank you, so that our underserved youth can also follow your lead as leaders in the community to see that they are worthy and that they need to be seen and they need to be heard so that we can unmute them, because unfortunately there are so many other youth coming after them. So we got to dig deep and continue to do the heavy lifting. So I'm so honored to be selected for this prestigious honorary breakfast and be called a shero. But then I just want to say also, we have a call to action. There's so much need. We're not the only ones in need. But we cut the ribbon on December 3rd, which is historical. I'm the first African-American woman actually to build green, energy-efficient tiny homes with a woman-led team. So we did create history. Thank you. And so the move-in is the second piece. We have ran into some challenges regarding the move-in for our 9 youth. And what's going to happen is we have residents already at another location. Those residents have earned the right to start moving into the small home experience so they can start their home ownership journey, which will allow us to select more youth. So our goal is to have 19, 18 to 22-year-olds off the street and thriving and being safe. So we do need your help. We are short about $100,000. So please tell a friend to tell a friend so that we can finish the exterior construction and get some other things that we weren't expecting to get done so that our 9 residents can move in and they can start their home ownership journey. That is one call to action. And my last call to action is please rise, because that's what kings and queens do. We are all here today because we are rising for an occasion. Our community needs us. So please stand with us. And so we're going to do this together because we are a community. We're going to do it for you because we all have bad days. We all need to be reminded that we're somebody. We all need that. I don't care where you come from, what you look like. We all need to be reminded that we're somebody. How much more for our underserved youth who are in a situation no fault of their own. Kids are in foster care and unhoused, no fault of their own. So do it for you, and please do it for them. I'm going to say somebody. We're going to say somebody together. Can we do that 3 times? Can we do it like we believe it? All right, here we go, Tucson. Let's go. I am. Somebody. I am. Somebody. I am. Somebody. Yes, you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a small token of appreciation. Another round of applause for Desiree Cook. Thank you for being here today. All right, I feel like we're just getting going. That's amazing. Okay, our next shero I'd like to call up is Jessica Howe. So if you haven't met Jessica, she's the co-founder of the Ernest House, a transitional housing program that has provided nearly 90,000 nights, 90,000 nights of shelter to individuals committed to rebuilding their lives. For over 7 years, she and her husband have helped residents gain stability, employment, education, and permanent housing, ensuring that they have the tools to achieve self-sufficiency. Her work supports returning citizens and those in recovery, offering them a second chance and a path forward. Mrs. Howe's career has been dedicated to service, advocacy, and empowerment, whether helping students, educators, or individuals in need of a fresh start. She believes that education, stability, and opportunity are the foundation for success and has committed her life's work to ensuring people from all backgrounds have the support they need to survive today. So please welcome Jessica.
Good morning, everyone. I have to admit, Desiree is pretty hard to follow. That was pretty outstanding, and I definitely feel really empowered after hearing what you had to say and grateful for the work that you're doing in the community, so thank you so much. My name is Jessica Howe. I am the co-founder of the Ernest House, and we provide housing, employment, and transportation opportunities for people coming out of incarceration and homelessness and substance abuse facilities. And you know, my husband and I really started this program 10 years ago because we were faced with homelessness and we were faced with barriers upon my husband's release from incarceration. And so what our goal is to be what we needed during that time. And as you heard, we have eliminated 90,000 nights of homelessness from the community, but what that also means is that we have added 90,000 nights of safety to our community. Thank you. And why I really love that number, and it really shows the impact and the need for safe housing in our community, what I'm excited to share with you this morning is just a few stories that I have been given permission to share from the clients that we serve. So to start, I'd like to tell you about Norm. Norm spent 20 years incarcerated. He was released to our houses with what he felt like was very little employability skills and very little faith in himself. My husband and I were able to connect him to Gap Ministries, where he received a culinary arts certificate and received gainful employment at the University of Arizona. Yeah, for Norm, yeah. We also have Jenny. Jenny stayed with us for several years, and during that time, she was able to rebuild relationships with her children and her grandchildren that she hadn't seen in years. We also have Jose. Jose's staying with us currently. He's used his time to go back to school. He has gotten his CDL and is now currently driving full-time for Suntran while also serving as management on our properties to give back to other people walking through our program. Yeah, yay! I wish they were here. And lastly, my very own mother-in-law, Lynn. She has been a part of my life for 25 years. And during those 25 years, I have never seen her have the capacity to live in a safe home or be sober or regulated for more than 3 months at a time. And she's been living with us in our homes for almost 2 years now. And during that time, it has been such a blessing for me to see her grow, become stable on her medications, be sober, and start rebuilding her relationship with my husband and my children and myself. And so I love that 90,000 number. It's so good, but really it's the people. The people are so good and they are so worth it. And it is our true why. And I'm just so grateful to have been able to share about them this morning. And I'm grateful to have been honored this morning alongside all of these other amazing sheroes. So thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you again, Jessica, for you and your husband and family and the work that you're doing, and thanks for being here today. Okay, our next shero couldn't be here today. We got a call, I think it was late last night, or a text. So Jan Lesher, she is our county administrator. Born and raised and educated in Tucson, Jan Lesher started working for Pima County in 2010, quickly advancing to deputy county administrator. In October of 2021, she became acting county administrator, and the Board of Supervisors hired her as county administrator in April of 2022. Prior to joining the county, Jan served Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano as chief of staff, overseeing the daily activities of the agency's 230,000 employees. Immediately prior to her move with the secretary to Washington, D.C., Jan was Governor Napolitano's chief of staff. Jan served on the advisory board for U of A's College of Social and Behavioral Sciences and was the first donor to create an endowment to help what funds is now the Innovation Circle. She also was actively involved in the campaign to fund the Women's Plaza of Honor, located on the west side of Centennial Hall in the National Institute for Civil Discourse. Okay, we have one more Shiro to honor today. Dr. Cherie Meeks, please come on up. I would say she needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think we need to go through and honor her process. Dr. Cherie Meeks is the Assistant Dean for Leadership and Student Development in the W.A. Frank Honors College. She leads college efforts and initiatives to create and foster a safe, welcoming, and inclusive environment in the college. Dr. Meeks incorporates equity and inclusion-based student affairs practice to review policies that contribute to a culture of inclusion and belonging. Dr. Meeks leads the Common Reading Program and designs complementary programming. She also teaches a unique first-year seminar that explores the ways in which policing and incarceration impact communities of color. In addition to designing a study away course, an experience in which students visit Montgomery, Alabama, to explore the history and impact of enslavement in the U.S., she also is the visionary for the creation and implementation of the Black Excellence Scholars Program. This program is designed to support Black and African American students through culturally responsive engagement, academic support, service, and community connections. In addition, she also serves on the Girl Scouts of Southern Arizona Board of Directors. Dr. Meeks is a recipient of the 40 Under 40 Award and was selected as the Woman of the Year. Yes. She was also named the Arizona Woman in Higher Education Woman of the Year. Dr. Meeks is also a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. So what I can say is, knowing you for the past year or two, she's one of the bravest, most interesting, kind people that I've met. So I'm so glad you're here.
Bring this down. So I brought paper with me. I am impressed by my fellow Shiros who came and didn't do that. So I'm going to try not to look at it because I do feel the energy in this room, and I'm not sure that I need that. But there are a couple things that I do want to be sure to read. But first and foremost, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters. Thank you so much to the president, to the entire planning committee, specifically to Pat for having to deal with me. I really do appreciate you all so much, and for the DEI committee for the nomination. I also want to give a shout out to the members of the NAACP. If you are a member, feel free to stand or wave your hand. Yes, we are all throughout this room. So I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. And I'm going to sort of blur. I know you heard a lot in the intro about my role at the university, and I'm going to mix that with my role with NAACP because there, to me, is no separation. The way that I handle my DEI work in both of these spaces, in some cases, can be different for reasons that you probably could guess. I want to maintain my job, but also be an advocate for things that are important to me. And sometimes the way I believe we should be advocating may or may not align with university direction. So the mission of the NAACP is to achieve equity, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies and practices that expand human and civil rights, eliminate discrimination, and accelerate the well-being, education, and economic security of Black people and all people of color. I am so grateful to be in the space of DEI. It is what I live and breathe. I often have a lot of trouble when I go home at night. You know, there are some jobs that when you leave at 5 o'clock, you know that you're not going to have to worry about the things that you had to discuss during the workday. But for me, I take what happens at work home. I take what happens at home in the community to work. And that is because it is embedded in who I am. So when we think about DEI, Anna, I don't know where you are, but yes, just because people say it is not a thing, it is absolutely still a thing. Because if we didn't need the thing, we wouldn't have created these policies and practices and programs and initiatives in the first place to deal with the oppressive systems that we were operating in. So simply because we say we're going to get rid of these things does not mean the need is not there. So this is where the rubber hits the road. I don't know. This is where we need to take action. I hope that when we all leave here today, we have been inspired to do something. I really like Michelle Obama, so let's do something. That something may not be the same for all of us. We need to think about what we are individually willing to do, willing to risk, willing to sacrifice, and the spaces in which we are willing to do that and to do it. So something that happened to me in the last month, I'll say, is I had a change in my title. You may or may not know a little thing about some executive orders and how institutions of higher education are responding to those. So when I was going back and forth, my title at the beginning of the year was Assistant Dean for Programs, Diversity and Inclusion. And I was encouraged to change my title so that I could not be targeted, quite frankly. And I had to really grapple with what I was willing to risk and where I could be best in this fight. And so it was very difficult for me to come to the decision that, yes, I will change my title to Assistant Dean for Leadership and Student Development, but understanding that all those programs that we created and we fought for our students from marginalized identities and from communities that need the support, I need to be there. I can't work in the same way if I'm not in the space. And so being in a position to have that opportunity and that choice to make that change has really been powerful. And so I think about the students that I interact with in the classroom, the students that I just interact with, not even in my classes. Shout out to Ruby, who is one of my amazing students that is here with me today as my guest. And will be joining me for the second time to Montgomery next week. It's so important that we think about the impact that diversity, equity, and inclusion, no matter what words we want to use, we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. We need to think about what that means for our future leaders, our future architects, our future teachers, our future attorneys, our future police chief. These are the young people that are going to be doing the work to move whatever seeds we plant now. They're going to grow them. And so it matters what we say and how we say it. And I heard a very intelligent woman say, history leaves clues. And that's so powerful to me. History teaches us something. So if we aren't talking about history, if we aren't thinking about the realities of the world that we live in now, how can we move forward in a wise way? We have clues. We know what's been done in the past, and there's so many things we don't want to relive. But we are brilliant. So many people in this room, all of us, we are intelligent and we have something to give. So think about the ways in which you would like to give. I want to encourage each and every one of you to become a member of the NAACP. We do have a table outside, so we would be happy to accept your membership at this time. But I am so grateful for all of you, and I want to leave you with this quote, and it is by Audre Lorde. And the quote is, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my voice in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid." Use your voice. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Meeks. There couldn't be a better closing to our program than that, quite honestly. Thank you so much again to all of our Sheroes, Desiree Cook, Jessica Howe, Jan Lesher, who couldn't be with us today, and Dr. Cherie Meeks. Thank you for all you do every single day to support our community, to help us grow and to be better. Okay, I think we're at our closing. So, a couple of quick items. First of all, if you're part of the Issues and Eggs Committee, please stand. Thank you for bringing forward this valuable conversation. Thank you for working the tireless months behind the scenes, the stress, the details, everything to bring our community here today. Thank you so much. Thank you to our elected officials for creating public policy to protect all of us. Thank you to JoLynn. JoLynn, please stand again. JoLynn Begay Lewis, for serving as our honored moderator today. We truly appreciate your willingness to step up, to learn how to do this with us, and to lead us in a meaningful way this morning. We appreciate you. Thank you to our sponsors. We would not be able to do this without you. Again, please take a look at the program, support our sponsors. If you're able to reach out and say thank you, we appreciate them. And then please continue the conversation right now. And like Dr. Meeks encouraged us to do, is take action, right? This isn't just a conversation. We have to decide in our own way how we're going to be contributing. And join us next year. We appreciate all of your support today. We can only do this work, the League can, with your help. And we appreciate you. Okay, so if you've purchased raffle tickets, they should be posted on the screen momentarily, and they're also posted in back. So please check to see if you're a winner before you go today. And I think that's it. Thank you again so much for coming, for participating, and supporting the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.